Hi, welcome in. This is Bitcoin Ben. My name is Corey Fico. We are here in Crypto World, which is a next door brick and mortar crypto community store and ATM where you can come in and with a little bit of cash and walk out with Bitcoin. Nice and easy. So Ben, you've been in the space for quite some time and quite frankly have some pretty interesting shows. I am very much looking forward to getting a little bit of your background, but for a reference, before I hand this over to you, we're going to be bantering back and forth on whether or not Bitcoin to the moon or Bitcoin to the floor. So you're going to play the role of the bull. I'm going to play the role of the bear.
Okay.
And I'm going to do it in a way where I am that person. So for anybody watching, if this gets clipped up later, I don't actually think it's all a sham or going to the floor. I just wanted to specify. Now, before we do that, Ben, why don't you tell me a little bit about how you got into Bitcoin and why you believe it's so powerful?
Well, first off, hang on one second. I got to have coffee. Thank you so much. As I actually do on my show every day, is I'm an ex-truck driver. Now, that's a little misleading because I'm not your average truck driver. I've always been an entrepreneur, and truck driving was actually kind of a relaxing environment between entrepreneurial adventures. So my passion is freedom, currency, entrepreneurism, and I've always loved, growing things. And once I realized exactly what Bitcoin was, it was clear where it was going to go. It's literally programmed to gain value. It's like when you send an email. If it's programmed right, if you got the right email and you have all that, it's going to go exactly to the right place. Well, the code of actual Bitcoin is programmed to increase in value. So the idea of actually being like a pro crypto and actually being like a bear or an actual bull. If you are a bear against Bitcoin, you're actually trying to argue against technological gravity. You can't do it. It's like temporarily, you may be able to jump up for like a second and defy gravity for a second, but the code of gravity will pull you back down, just like the code of actual Bitcoin will push it back up.
Wow, that's beautiful. Well, that said, you said you can't do it. I'm going to try to be the one who argues against it here. So let's go ahead and roll right into this. I think this will be a fun event for both of us. I'm going to try to do my best to give you a hard time. It's going to probably be hard for me to do it. But
I'm married. I live in hard times.
I'm married there. I feel you. So my wife is wonderful. I love you. But
my wife is at home.
We're going to, just to play the role here, I'm going to not be Corey. I'll be Tim, let's just say. So I'm meeting you for the first time, Ben, and I I don't believe that Bitcoin is going to go anywhere. In fact, I think that the entire thing is a ruse, and I think that anybody who is getting into it is foolish. Now, that said, I am at least curious enough to have a conversation with you, though. So what kind of set the groundwork? So, Ben, I've been hearing about this Bitcoin thing, and I see you talking about it all the time, but I don't, why are you doing it? Like, what's the whole point of this? It just seems like another way to shuffle money out into something else, and it's just another way to aggregate wealth.
Well, it is, I completely agree with you that it is another way. It's a new way. And just like we've evolved away from like coins that were gold and silver in the early days, we evolved in like paper money. Then we had personal checks. Then we had credit cards. This is the next advancement in human currency other than centralized currencies. We've always lived in an environment of centralized currency with the European banks, the actual like Federal Reserve, which are strictly manipulated through the creation of currency. So if our currency got too high, they'd print more, which would devalue our currency over time. Now, Bitcoin is a decentralized global digital currency, which means it cannot be manipulated for long periods of time by any one entity or groups of entities. So your currency in the future will actually be under your control as an asset and not manipulated at the creation source of the currency.
Well, and that sounds good. However, why would any country want that? And also, too, would they allow it? And if it's been working this way for so long, why change it?
Well, it hasn't been working. That's the whole issue, is the money that say, like my grandfather or even my dad earned in 80 or like 1975, when he was actually making $180 a week. Well, that $180 has lost value. So even his retirement that he saved for has actually been devalued away through the printing press of the Federal Reserve. So it hasn't been working. We've lived in a very bad monetary system. It's just the only one we know, so we don't recognize just how bad it is.
But how would this actually replace that? I don't understand.
Very easily, because it switches us from an inflationary currency into a deflationary currency, which means the longer you hold your actual Bitcoin, it gains value as usage grows and as time and the code progress. So money you earn now that you put in actual Bitcoin will be worth more in 10 years.
So I'm hearing you say that the money we have now goes down because they make more of it. I don't understand why Bitcoin's going to go up in value. Like, how does that happen?
It's the code. It's now, I don't know how deep you want me to go, but it's basically Bitcoin is there is a fixed number of them in existence. And as the technology ages, as the longer it's around, the more it grows in adoption, or really not even adoption, more than how much activity is on the network. Even if the same amount of money is put in every year, the value will go up because of the fixed amount that exists. There will only be 21 million actual Bitcoin ever in existence. So as humans evolve, as you know, and we move our everyday existence more digital than physical, we need a global decentralized currency for this new world. And the reason countries will accept it is because they have no choice. It isn't like this is an option for them. Like, well, we'll make Bitcoin illegal. That's not going to work in today's world. Governments have lost authority because they've lost credibility. And as we move along, and the youth and younger people and some of us older people recognize that the old system, the old way of doing things is not applicable to the new evolution in technology, and the world's actually going global with or without the approval of our governments.
Yeah, that you make a fair point. That said, though, a couple things I've seen as I've looked at it, and I guess probably the largest reason why I really don't understand or haven't been converted, so to speak, is that people talk about how meaningful it is, but a lot of the people that I know that try to get into it, they lose money along the way, and it seems like it's harder to buy. It's wherever they put it. Sometimes they can lose it there. They can lose it if they send it to the wrong place. And the value, at least in the last year or so, seems to have gone down a lot. So to that point, it's hard for me to see how Bitcoin's going to go up in value over the long term.
Well, if you want to see how it's actually gone up in value, you look at a longer timeline. The technology is only 12 or 13 years old. It went from less than a penny up to $63,000. And then we've actually dropped back down. Well, everyone who understands digital technology understands there are waves of adoption where you have hype and it goes up. Then that hype, especially in this environment, we have governments that are actively working to try and drop the price of cryptocurrencies. They're using media, they're using futures contracts. They're basically trying to sabotage it long enough so they can use our technology and try and launch their own, not cryptocurrencies, but digital currencies, and try and introduce those as this is the new normal. Well, that's not going to work. There's too many people who know that the Federal Reserve, the EIB, the World Bank is all a fraud. And now that we know, we can't unknow that.
While it may be true that there are a lot of people that feel very disenfranchised, and I think most people, I do think that it would be hard to make the argument that Bitcoin is going to stick around through all of that whenever they have the might and will to not only print money, but to control how people use money. And to that extent, what would you say to, let's say, China outlawing Bitcoin at one point? I believe now, if I saw the news, that you can purchase it, but you can't use it to spend for currency. But what would your argument be for if a country like China can make Bitcoin illegal as a cryptocurrency, but then bring forth their CBDC, their central bank digital currency? Why wouldn't the United States or anywhere else do that if they start feeling the slip of their grip?
Well, they could, but it's irrelevant. The advantage of the actual Bitcoin is it's a technological elephant that keeps growing. And the government is a remnant of an old structure that is not large enough and has lost the credibility to take on the elephant. So they can say whatever they want to say. But in reality, a law is not a law when it comes to actual Bitcoin, because a law requires you have to know who's breaking the law. With actual Bitcoin and Lightning Network, I can send you money and they have no idea who you are or I am. We have a private address that doesn't have our name or social security number on it or anything. It's a transfer of value amongst two agreeing parties. Now, the government may not like that, and they might write a few words on a piece of paper and then sign it and call it a law. Well, good for them. It doesn't matter, because we are going to evolve with the technology, whether they want us to or not. What I want people to realize is that governments are not authorities anymore. They're an illusion. It's an illusion of authority. And the only way that the authority works is if you actually buy into it, if you apply their authority to yourself.
Well, speaking of authority, if you're a government, you're talking about the peer-to-peer, the transactions where you could just pay me for anything and vice versa, and them not to easily be able to track that down or at all, depending on the circumstances. If you're a government, I could see you being very scared of issues coming from illicit use of it, maybe kind of like what happened with Tornado Cash, illicit use of the currency, and also not being able to tax it. So, and to that point, if you're a government afraid of not being able to tax something, like that's your income, I feel like they might actually want to throw their weight around pretty heavy. Do you feel like there's something, what little weight they do have, do you feel like there is something that is going to keep them from doing that in the future and just kind of like setting the flag on the ground and kind of moving forward?
Well, I would argue that the government isn't afraid of illicit usage. They don't care about illicit usage. They care about usage of their currency. They don't care about illicit usage of the US dollar. They want people to, even if you're selling cocaine, if you're using their currency, they're okay with it. Now, they may have this law to the general public that, we don't want cryptos used for illicit activities. Well, number one, illicit is an opinion. They don't want you to do that. Well, I would argue that they don't care. They're only worried about the control. And as for taxation, the government has never relied on taxation for actually paying its bills. It's why we're $31 trillion in actual debt. They haven't relied on taxes for 100 years. They print money, and that's how they pay their bills. They print money at the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve gives it to the government. The government goes out and goes shopping. And then the American people have a national debt, which is absolutely insane, because in order to have a legal debt, you have to have signed a document accepting that legal debt. And I don't know about you, but I've never signed a loan commitment with the Federal Reserve.
If all that's true,
Which it is,
then what is the government going to do at that point in time with all of that debt?
nothing. They're going to basically, and what's going on right now, they're transitioning away from the Federal Reserve controlling our dollars into the Treasury controlling our dollars again. What's going to happen is the Federal Reserve and the global banking system as a whole will be, and that's what we're living through right now, they're going to be the sacrificial lamb into the Great Reset. And so all of that debt will actually go away when the Federal Reserve is closed.
So just wipe the debt clean and move forward.
Yep.
A lot of that debt is bondholders and people that have purchased the debt, and not only from other countries, but from our country. What happens to them?
That's whenever the governments have already announced and put out programs of, let's see, what do they call it? The minimum income, or they have a term for it. It's where they basically pay you a check from the government every year that will handle your rents or whatever like that. And,
Yeah, it's UBI.
Universal Basic Income. Yep. And that is basic because what they're moving, the Great Reset, is just a great illusion again. They're going to have a mass media campaign in, I'd say, the next year and a half, explaining how the system is unorganized. We don't know where all of the derivatives are at. We don't know who owns what house. We don't know all of the loans. Now, they'll probably blame it on a hack or in Russia or some, horrible entity has done this to us. It just wasn't the government, it wasn't us. It was the boogeyman over here, and they'll collapse the system and then reboot it. And that will be the great reset that Klaus Schwab is, I call him Schwab.
Yeah.
No,
sorry.
Thought we were arguing.
Yeah, we're arguing. Yeah, sorry. No.
Attitude, yeah.
Klaus is a brilliant visionary, and I believe in everything he says.
I'd say he's visionary, but I wouldn't say brilliant. He's basically a retarded Dr. Evil, because as much as he thinks and as much as the global leaders think they're intelligent, they're actually very stupid, because they don't know human reaction. They know leading humans, but they don't know human natural reaction. And they don't understand why all of a sudden this wave of nationalism and pro-freedom has, swelled up. Well, those of us who know history, which I happen to be an avid history buff of actual history, not the history that they've taught us. Like, here's an example. In World War I and World War II, those were created wars to reorganize the world. And since then, they've used military operations, and they have created a world government structure that we call the United Nations. And that entity's whole existence was to lead us to this very point here. Because now, one of two things are going to happen. We're either going to completely centralize under one global organization, or we are going to completely destroy the world order, and we are going to decentralize completely into individual entities, humans. And what they don't realize is with every centralization push, the decentralization push actually grows stronger every day, because individuals don't really care about global issues. They can mouth it all day long. Say, oh, I care about the rainforest. Well, you ask the average mother, the average father, would you sacrifice your child for the rainforest? No, no, they wouldn't. So, which is their priority? The individualism of their children, or a rainforest that they've probably never even seen? Or global warming's another example that they push. We've got to fix global warming or we're all going to die. Well, the issue that they're having is the replacement technology for what they call fossil fuels, which is another illusion. They aren't. Oil is not made out of old rotting dinosaurs, but that's another show. Their replacement technology is not comparable to the needs of the global economy. So the recent pandemic that we went through was basically to launch the slowing down of the global economy. They don't want to collapse, but they have to slow it down in chunks. And the first wave was the pandemic. That basically broke the just-in-time global supply chain. Well, once that was broke, all right, now on to the next thing. Now they have to break the national global supply chains. So that's why they're using inflation rates and regulations for global warming to actually break America's national supply chain, using oil prices, using currency manipulation, using the environmental acts of, hey, there's a snail in this river, so humans can't use this water. And so we're having a self-imposed drought all over California, Arizona. All of these are self-imposed, blamed on global warming.
So it sounds to me, based off of from what I'm hearing, Tim, from what I'm hearing, is that you feel that there is a change in the way things have been controlled, and that a controlled descent to restructure everything is part of the agenda, and that Bitcoin allows us to hang on to something during that transition?
Yes. It isn't about the value in US dollars anymore. We're past that. If you're looking at the dollar value of Bitcoin, it's the equivalent of looking at the dollar value of a lifeboat as the Titanic goes down. Like, well, we were on the Titanic. This thing's beautiful. This is a rich boat. Why would I want to get on that little wooden boat over there? But the Titanic's going down, flooding with water. It's about to crest and sink. And you're arguing that the lifeboat that's not sinking isn't as pretty as the boat you're on right now that's about to be at the bottom of the ocean. So if your argument is, well, the Bitcoin boat isn't as pretty right now, well, that may or may not be true. It's really how long have you been on that lifeboat? I've actually been on that lifeboat for several years, and it's beautiful from where I'm sitting.
Why Bitcoin and not gold or something like that?
It's the same reason why horse and buggy versus Lamborghini. It's quicker, it's global, it's decentralized. There is no argument between gold and silver and actual Bitcoin. Because gold and silver is a physical, I have to literally hand you gold, which means I have to track you down, find you, and go, here's one coin, and let me shave off a little bit of dust for the 99 cents I owe you. Not realistic, not in a global technological advancing world.
So what happens if it's less design that's causing all of this to happen and more ineptitude? Or put another way, what if all of these things that are happening throughout the government are, some of them are clearly trying to be planned, but by and large, it's just people falling into making continual mistakes. And it isn't necessarily a great reset, at least by all, other than a small group that I would agree are clearly pushing it to some extent, or heavily. What if it's just ineptitude and there isn't a transition in that same way? Will Bitcoin still have a place in that world?
Absolutely. But the argument that they're just stupid, well, number one, I would hope they wouldn't want that argument against them. And number two, they've written it down over and over again. So you can't blame, ineptitude when you wrote it down 80 years ago and you said, this is what we're going to do. And then you actually followed that timeline. Exactly. In 1941, there was a progressive booklet printed called The Road We Are Traveling. Now, for those of you who remember, President Obama had an actual documentary made about him called The Road We Have Traveled. So the progressive movement has planned this whole 80, 90, 100-year plan forever. So you can't say, oops, it's just a group of accidents that have led us here. When in reality, we have proof it was a plan, because their pamphlet explained how they would transition using war and global reorganization to create a global financial system that at that point in 1941, they named it System X. They didn't have a name for it yet. Well, that System X is what we are at right now. And whenever the President Obama documentary was made, it was prior to the rise of the nationalists. So this actual documentary was created when they thought they didn't have any credible opposition. So they felt secure in creating this documentary, basically saying, rah, rah, we won. You know, the road we were traveling is now the road we traveled. So they viewed it as all wrapped up and done. Well, with the rise of nationalism and Trump and Brexit and all of these other global, resistance movements, the plan got screwed up. And that's why they had to replan after Trump. And they had, and I say Trump, but it's a larger movement than that, the global nationalist movement. And so now where they're at, they're in a hurry now because they've already set the economy up to collapse. There's no going back from that. So now they have to hurry up and implement this new system so that the timing's right. When it collapses, they have the solution so that the people don't have enough time to actually point fingers of blame at them.
I know that unfortunately we're coming up on time here, and what I want to do is kind of make a point, counterpoint, and then kind of wrap up to where does Crypto World fit into all this, because I think that there is an adoption issue, because if you're, there are some opportunities there to reach more people, and we want to make sure to hit that before we round out. But to kind of make another, I guess, say 2 points, because the second one will lead into the adoption issue. So as Tim, I see a lot of people thinking of Bitcoin going up or going down. I see Bitcoin going down heavily as inflation goes up and as the stock market goes down, because they can't survive and purchase Bitcoin at the same time, and they will be afraid and they'll take their money out to just buy enough food to live. What say you to that?
I could see that happening, and that's probably a reality for a lot of people. But I would recommend and have them look a little bit longer term. Don't let a created emergency hold you back from recognizing generational wealth in the future. The powers that be rely on fear to keep you away from the lifeboats. They encourage you to listen to the music that's being played out on the terrace so that all of them can transition into the lifeboats before you do. And I point out, Jamie Dimon, you're a liar, and I hope you go to hell.
That was pretty intense.
Thank you.
So to round it out, hey, it's strong to your beliefs, as you should be. So turning kind of last bit, and this is kind of where Tim transitions back into Corey, because
Hi,
of the amount
Corey.
of time.
Boy, that Tim guy, he was an asshole.
Right?
No.
I mean, Tim asked some relevant questions, as those are kinds of questions that Tim should be asking, that other people should be asking.
But I think Tim just needs a little bit more time of watching my show.
So, and to that point, this is where kind of Tim transitions into Corey, and kind of we phase over in the last bit. Is it seems to me that even if you were to agree, if one were to, which I think we would agree that Bitcoin is valuable and meaningful, and for a multitude of reasons, it still seems like there is a massive disconnect into not just awareness, but the branding behind it. It seems like a good percentage of the population, even those who own it, don't really understand what it is, why it matters, or how to buy it properly, how to store it properly. And I'm curious how you see the future solving those problems. Clearly, I believe that crypto world has a huge stake in that. But that said, what do you say to all that? Like, how do you think that looks?
Crypto world is going to be looked back on as the equivalent of Henry Ford's garage. And it's going to outgrow massively anything, any entity, any brick and mortar, any, let's say something like a bank. It's going to outgrow that by just magnitudes, because they are, and I don't know if I can say this, so I'll say it anyway. They're actually going to franchise, and when they do, and they show the profitability of the technology, the mining, the education, the use case of actual Bitcoin. As that grows, it's going to avalanche into just a 2 or 3 year growth spurt that is going to make crypto world the entrepreneurial gold mine of franchises.
I tend to believe that too, and I am happy to be here having this conversation with you and to be talking about this now, because for so many of us it feels like we're late to the party, but quite frankly, as we know, you're not. Like, if you're listening to this now, you're listening to this a year from now, hopefully still 3-4 years from now, it hasn't gotten to the point in time where it's not too late, and I suspect it won't. There's still time to walk into a local crypto world and to say, hey, I've got some cash, I'd rather have Bitcoin.
This is your lifeboat right there. And you need to get in and figure out who else is in the lifeboat and what the lifeboat has to offer.
Yeah.
Because as the Titanic goes down, the lifeboats must get bigger, because more and more people will be leaving the old system, looking for an answer. And crypto world is that lifeboat. You have to do it. It's just when you will do it. And you're not late to the party. You're not late to the party. The party's just getting going. But this is a party that you have to attend, because the other choice is the party on the Titanic at the bottom of the ocean.
Wow. I couldn't think of a more powerful way to end this particular session. By the way, my God, Ben, that amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Make sure to join us back here. We'll be at 11 o'clock Central Time. We're going to be with Bobby Lee, founder of Ballet Wallets, and also to brother of Charlie Lee, founder of Litecoin. And if you share this vision like we share this vision, that Bitcoin is powerful, it is the lifeboat, and that you want to see crypto world expand into your territory, and you want to see this reach as many people as possible, make sure to go onto our WeFunder. You can actually invest right now, and you can do small amounts, large amounts. Of course, reach out if you are interested in having a crypto world in your location as well too. And of course, if you want to do something smaller, you don't feel like investing, you can always come to our Patreon. That every little bit helps. It helps to engage with communities and have different community events. And of course, subscribe and share.
And one more thing.
Yeah.
For every crypto world that is opened, I will show up and I will do a live show at your grand opening.
Hey, that's worth it alone.
Exactly.
Yeah, that was awesome, Ben. Thank you.
Hey, no problem.